I'm Susie Dominic, the president of the Children's Media Association. And for those of you who don't know what CMA is about, we're a nonprofit industry organization, and we work to inspire, inform, and connect those working across the kids and family media space. And a big part of that is that we really build a truly supportive community for everyone to share their good days and, the challenges, everything, so that we can all come together and make the best content possible. We are 100% volunteer run, so we're super passionate about what we do. And we're also streaming this panel on LinkedIn. So I wanted everyone to know that, because if you have questions, the last 10 to 15 minutes, we'll be grabbing those questions from LinkedIn and we'll be giving them to our panelists to answer for you. So feel free to jump over there and add a comment. But then I think from here, Ina, do you want to share a little bit about your foundation too?
Thank you so much, Susie. We are so excited to partner with the Children's Media Association on this panel. If you are new to the Writers Guild Foundation, we are a nonprofit organization based in LA, and our mission is to preserve and promote the craft of writing for the screen, along with hosting events such as this with incredible film and TV writers. We also manage the library on 3rd and Fairfax, which is open to the public by appointment only. And we also host community outreach programs such as the Veterans Writing Project and the Writers Access Support Staff Training Program. If you'd like more information on the foundation, you can visit us on our website at wgfoundation.org or find us on social media. And hope to see you all at the next event. Thank you all for being here.
All right, cool. All right, so let's get going. I'm going to introduce Morgan too. Morgan Dameron. We don't even have your bio up. We should have done that as well, Morgan. I'll let you introduce yourself. Morgan and I are collaborating on a couple of projects, but we're also dear friends, and we thought this would be a fun event to do together. So we'll start by introducing our guests. Morgan, do you want to begin?
Sure. Yeah, I'm so happy to be here, and thank you all for tuning in into our amazing collection of panelists here. I know we have just an awesome hour in store for everyone. I'm a writer-director coming to you live from Los Angeles, and first up, I'm going to introduce Kelly Lynne D'Angelo, my lovely friend. Welcome. So Kelly is a Two-Spirit Tuscarora Haudenosaunee writer, performer, and activist who has done her fair share of storytelling in different mediums, including television, books, and stage musicals. Her recent credits include Rutherford Falls, Kim, and writing for TBS's Miracle Workers, Netflix's Spirit Rangers, Adult Swim's Final Space, and Dungeons & Dragons Candlekeep Mysteries. If that weren't enough, her musical Starry, beside her co-writer Matt DeHaan, is set to run on London's West End this year. And you can catch her on various online platforms as a professional dungeon master for Dungeons & Dragons, Geek and Sundry, College Humor, BuzzFeed, and more. She was awarded Writer of the Year at the 2019 LA Skins Fest annual gala and listed on Broadway World as one of the top 100 Twitter accounts to follow in 2021. Kelly is also a proud selection committee member for Outfest Screenwriter Lab, as well as a mentor and coach for Creative Lab Hawaii's ideation program for Indigenous storytellers. Welcome, Kelly.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here.
Absolutely. And I'd love to introduce the super talented Tracey Thomson. Tracey is a 2-time Emmy Award-winning writer who serves as creator and executive producer of Secrets of Sulphur Springs, a time travel mystery series streaming on Disney Plus and airing weekly on the Disney Channel. She was previously co-head writer on the CBS daytime drama The Young and the Restless. Tracey also served as associate head writer on ABC's General Hospital and All My Children, my favorite. Prior to moving to Los Angeles, she was an associate producer at CNN in Atlanta. Tracey currently resides in Southern California with a husband, her 2 children, and apparently a very spoiled dog.
Very spoiled.
Thank you, Tracey. Glad you're here with us.
Nice to meet everyone.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then I have the pleasure of also introducing Ilana Peña. who is a creator, showrunner, executive producer, and director of the critically acclaimed Emmy-nominated Diary of a Future President on Disney Plus. The two-season series has been called a must-watch by Parade, wholly charming by the AV Club, and consistently sweet, authentic, and humorous by Remezcla. Won Best Latinx Show from the Latino Media Awards in 2021 and was nominated for a GLAAD Award in 2021 and 2022. Ilana directed episode 209 of Diary, as well as an episode of the HBO Max comedy Gordita Chronicles. Oh, I love Gordita Chronicles. Peña was named as a 2020 recipient of Forbes 30 Under 30 Hollywood and Entertainment and honored in Variety's 2021 Inclusion Impact Report. She served as a writer on the critically acclaimed series Crazy Ex-Girlfriend on the CW, where she wrote and produced multiple episodes, contributed song lyrics, and was featured on screen and on the soundtrack. Ilana is continuing to develop projects through her overall deal at CBS Television Studios, in addition to writing features for Universal Studios, Disney Plus, and 20th Century Studios, where she is penning the reboot of the 1988 film Working Girl, produced by Selena Gomez.
Which
Welcome!
I'm dying to know more about.
This is so nice. Thank you. Can you follow me around and just remind me that I'm not a failure? Thank you.
Yeah, we should take a moment to all, for you guys to pat yourselves on the back. That's just an
listen to these
incredible resume there.
accomplishments.
It's so nice to be in this panel with these wonderful people. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to jump in. One of the biggest questions, in development that is often asked, sorry, let me turn my child off, is what was the creative inspiration for your shows? And what often follows on that question is, and what was the journey to actually bring your series to the screen? So let's start. We'll start with Tracey. Why don't we start with you and tell us your journey?
First up, no pressure. I had been writing in soaps for a long time, and I decided to take a break to have my first child. And when she was 4 months old, my agent called and he said, "Are you ready to go back to work?" And I'm like, "Well, what do you have?" So went to a general at Disney, and they had read a script that I had written that was not very Disney. So very surprised. But they had a book series that they were interested in possibly adapting. They also were interested in doing a continuing drama. And they liked that I had soap experience. So we talked a little bit about what their parameters were. They also wanted to have a show that appealed to boys and girls because boys age out of Disney faster than girls. And they said, so, if you have any ideas, give us a call. So went away, and about a month later, I called my agent and I said, I think I'm ready to pitch to Disney. So I had come up with, Secrets of Sulphur Springs. It's as you said, a time travel mystery show. Probably biggest inspiration for me was Goonies. Favorite movie as a kid. Yeah. I also wanted to do something family friendly. I'd never written in the family space before. And at the time, as I said, I had just had my first child, and I also had 10 nieces and nephews under the age of 10 that liked that I worked in TV, but had never seen anything I'd done. So I thought it might be fun to do something for them. So the series, actually, all the characters are named after my nieces and nephews, and they get a kick out of it. So it's really a love letter to them. But as far as how I got the idea, I was researching another project actually about sort of doomsday, which is a little dark, and bunkers and stuff, and people who buy bunkers and preparing for the end. And I stumbled upon a couple articles about the Greenbrier Hotel. And how, no one knew there was a bunker under there until the 90s, which I thought was incredible. Right. And I said, okay, well, that's cool, but it can't just be a bunker. And what's scary? Basements are scary. And I think that I like the time travel element because that gives you the wish fulfillment. Yeah. And then as far as the mystery aspect, I love mystery. And I think kids really dive into that. And especially in continuing storytelling, like giving them clues to follow is really important so that they want to watch the next episode and you're not just wrapping it up. And so that was a big, when I came up with the pilot, that's what I was thinking of. How can I keep this going? Because it could have been a limited series, because every season we do one big mystery, but then it kicks off another. I think this is the first time that my nieces and nephews, at least, were introduced to cliffhangers. They're like, wait, because our first season didn't stream right away on Disney Plus. And they're like, what do you mean we have to wait a week to watch the next episode? And I'm like, yeah, this is how TV used to be. You have to wait. So, the challenge of always giving them something more. And I think Disney was also like, well, if you give them these clues, what if they're ahead of you? That's great. Let them be ahead of you. I wanted it to be a show where they talk about it with their friends. They have all sorts of theories. I mean, my nieces and nephews were coming up with all sorts of theories. And I was like, wow, that's really smart. I wish I would have thought of that. Kids are so much smarter than we give them credit for. And I think I just wanted a sort of a show that seemed realistic, even though it's about time travel, just real kids, that kind of had like a Stand By Me vibe, but so a lot of different influences. Sorry, this is I'm taking up a lot of time here, but
it's all good.
Just a lot of different influences. Goonies, as I said. To Kill a Mockingbird. There's lots of stuff in there that when I watched your pilot, oh my gosh, I was like, oh my God, I love To Kill a Mockingbird. So,
I was gonna say I have those references. Kids being like
what
really
influences writers that you just the first time you read a book or see something and you just hold on to it. And so that's how I came up with that.
I love that. I love that you also have that built-in focus group surrounding you.
Yeah. They're very vocal as well.
Exactly. All right, Ilana, do you want to share how it all got started?
Well, first, I want to say how in awe I am that you can write a mystery and sustain it. We tried for season 2 to do one mystery episode. We wanted to bring 2 girls as friends, and we were like, what if they solve a caper? And it was back when we were in person. It was pre-pandemic, and we spent the whole day at the whiteboard, trying to figure it out of the janitor's closet and who did what. And at the end of the day, it was we just couldn't do it. It was just too that plus story plus character development. I was like, all right, they do a group project. That's what it ended up being. But anyway, but yeah, no, I wrote Gary the President is I wrote it on spec when I was a writer's assistant, actually, on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. I wrote it before Disney Plus I existed, or at least was in my frame of mind. I just wanted it to be, I always had this image of a little 10-year-old or 10 to 15-year-old Latino girl like this on the side of a bus. Because I feel like we see so many stories about boyhood, and they're great. They're the stories I grew up with. I was a huge Boy Meets World fan. My family would watch Everybody Hates Chris, Malcolm in the Middle, The Wonder Years. There's so many shows, and the boyhood experience has become I know things about the boyhood experience because I watch those shows. Right. But girlhood is had been gate kept a little more. Unless you're really young. I actually had a producer once when I was pitching the show. They were like, we love it. We want to make this with you. Can you age her up? Because people have a purity issue. That was the phrase. I'll never forget it. Where it's you can have girls be young and in their Mary Janes and Shirley Temple or Riverdale. And it's that space in between. And that made me double down. I was like, I was going to say that. Exactly. I have to tell this story because what I had growing up was Lizzie McGuire, was there are other shows, but I can't remember them right now. But those shows I felt were Tracey, you were saying kids are so much smarter than we give them credit for. I love those shows, but I do feel they were kids shows, not kids and family. They were kids shows. Right. And I wanted family viewing. I wanted everyone to sit on the couch and watch something. Yeah. And so I wrote it. I got connected with Gina Rodriguez's production company, who they wanted her the exact age she was, which was 12. And we took it out with the studio, with CBS Studios. And we took it, like, I pitched to ABC, I pitched to Apple. Like, there's a lot of different ways that this could have been. And then Disney Plus, which hadn't launched yet, it was kind of like, you know, perfect, right time, right place. They were looking for sort of exactly what that was. And I think they also really liked, in terms of inspiration, it was very much like inspired by my childhood, my diary. I should have it like more accessible for moments like this. I have my 6th and 7th grade diaries. I brought my 6th grade diary to the pitch. I felt like the way I wrote in it was like writing for an invisible audience. Like, I had private and keep out, and I just was like, nobody could ever see this. But I wrote with such like as if I was writing a book, like as if I was a big theater kid. Like, I was very dramatic. And I was like, that's such an incredible narrator to take us through and to see the world through these eyes of somebody who like wants to kind of flex on the vocab words she learned that week, but also kind of realizing that like, oh, like my mom is going to move on after my dad died. Like, seeing the world through that, I thought would be really meaningful. So luckily Disney Plus agreed.
Yeah. No, I think the voice in your show is spot on, and what girls need to hear today. You know, they need that sense of strong character so that they can relate to them and not, you know, see someone that they can relate to. Kelly, tell us about your journey.
Yeah, mine's a little different. I have been staff writer on several shows. I've been developing a lot of shows. I also sold a pilot last year, but that's an hour-long fantasy space, so a totally different space. But it's exciting because, at least for me, in terms of how both of these amazing panelists just spoke about their storytelling, when I worked on Spirit Rangers, that was a revolutionary show for me, because though I was just a writer, it was me, Joey, and Chris Valencia, the show creator, who's Chumash. And so the three of us really came together, and we had to support one another to get the story told. Yeah. Much as we've been talking about not seeing certain people in certain spaces, I have never seen a Native child ever under the age of 16 thriving. Right. And so we had to conceptualize just not how do we present ourselves, but where do we even begin? We can't even sort of go into even navigating more nuanced storytelling. We really have to introduce people to the idea of what Native children are. And so taking that step, that big step, was daunting. Mm-hmm. And so Carissa is just an amazing woman, and she really leaned on Joey and I to set up the stage for what that looked like. Not just because, you know, we all as Native people wanted to tell our stories, but we wanted to tell them the way we wanted to tell them. And that's even harder to navigate, I think. Mm-hmm. It's really reconceptualizing how you approach story and how you approach storytelling. And so how we began that was really navigating, what did we want to see when we were kids? Right. And just beginning that discussion, just putting little brown kids who are proud of their heritage, proud of where they come from, proud of who they are. It was really powerful to just begin that story. And I mean, the weight that carries, the visibility that carries, the only way I could have even approached that corner and the way I wanted to do it was through children's media, because for me personally, that had never been done before. And at least for Native people in my tribe in particular, children and elders are the most important people. So it was really important for me to honor that first and foremost.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. I love that story. And I just love the show. I love everything about the show, including the palette. Like, the minute it opens, you're like, wow, what is going on? This is amazing. So, thank you for sharing that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. That joy really permeates, doesn't it, when you watch it? Like, you can feel how much fun you all had sort of putting everything into it.
Yeah, and we really approached it. Sorry if I'm jumping in on this, but we really did approach it from like so how I approached it was a lot of adults have preschool understanding of Native people. So how do you make a story that might even introduce adults to this, because they don't even understand that we're still around. So that's where this sort of profound corner really resonated for me, because I knew it wasn't just for the kids. This was for a much wider audience when it really boiled down to it.
Absolutely. Well, I think that's a great kind of transition into our next like big umbrella question for you all, which is really talking about kids and family audiences. So when you're thinking about that audience, you know, what opportunities are there, what challenges are there that are different than maybe when you're writing, you know, for an adult show or a spec or something like that. And I thought maybe we could go in audience age order, starting with Spirit Rangers, since they're the youngest. So can you tell us a little bit about, you know, that process for writing for preschool?
Yeah, so it's crazy because I have written in animation and live action for young preschool, Bridge, which is technically Spirit Rangers. Our audience is right on that 7 to 9 mark. I've written for 6 to 11. I've written adult. Like I'm working on something right now that's like teenage storytelling. So there's such a spread of storytelling and audiences in terms of the medium and the story that you're telling and how that narrative works for the script or for the story you're trying to tell. And for me personally, the thing that excited me about approaching Spirit Rangers was, and I'll be very honest when I say Netflix was really building out their sort of scope as to what their storytelling could be in that space. And so there was a lot of room to play, a lot of room to present things. And they were so supportive of the show. They were really there to say yes and to listen. So it was a really beautiful marriage of studio and storytelling as we were sort of trying to come up with how do we tell the stories we want to tell, but do it in an appropriate manner for our audience as well. And again, I think at the end of the day, we wanted to make something that felt whimsical and fun first and foremost, like the color schemes, the worlds you're visiting, the characters and their voices. There's a beating heart within it that is one of nurturing and loving. And I feel that, again, us as a Native people, at least how we, the three of us, approach this, we really wanted to come from a perspective of the heart. So how can we give? How can we nurture? How can we take care of our youth? And that requires an awareness and a responsibility. My people believe in the 7 generations. So you look 7 generations forward and 7 generations back. So at least in how I was approaching the story was every story I'm telling, how does that echo in the past and how will that echo in the future? Is the story that we're telling going to impact positively for our youth? So thankfully in that Bridge space, there's so many beautiful stories to tell. And we got to have music in this. It's just such a beautiful show. And again, I think for us, at least in terms of audience, that we were approaching it with trying to build it for that Bridge audience when we wanted to do a topic that was a little bit more nuanced, like Native mascots and how people wear headdresses and they shouldn't be doing that. We were not afraid to step into that space, and Netflix was there to support us, which was really beautiful. So very grateful that studio was so supportive of us trying to tell stories that seemed a little edgier, a little more cerebral, but at the end of the day, kids understood it better sometimes than the adults, of course.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I do think, being an ex-Netflixer, I do think that that's something that they have done really well, given voice to so many voices that previously were not heard. So I love that. Ilana, we talked a little bit about it, but would love to know more in terms of the tone and everything for your series, because you are a strong female and you wanted that to come through with your main characters. So embracing that and wrapping that in the story, we'd love to know about that journey for you.
Yeah, well, I think that a thing that helped, I think at least me and I think our writers too, sort of I felt an enormous pressure because kids were watching it, and also because the word president is in the title, to say something and to make this girl inherently good, but also flawed. Like I was like, I don't want her to be perfect. I want to present, and that honestly was sometimes the hardest stuff to get through. It's like, it's really hard for people to see like a 12-year-old girl like mess up and be messy. That's not, we don't have a lot of, we don't have a template for that really. But I think the president aspect of it, I liked to approach every episode as like, okay, this girl becomes president in like, 20, 30 years. That's what we know. And then, so what are the things that she needs? What makes a good leader? What are the things that she needs to learn? And then that would sort of help guide what the story of the episode was, which also not coincidentally, I guess it makes a lot of sense. I was also a leader, and I was like, so it was and I do think that the purest selves we is who we were as children. And for me, like when I was 12, 13, like that's probably the most me I ever was until like now. When I really was harnessing that voice a lot, not just to tell those stories, but to have belief and faith and trust in myself that I could do this and be a boss and make a show.
Right.
Because 12-year-old me would have been like, yeah, of course you're making a Disney show. Like, are we starring in it? Like, are you on Broadway? And 28, 9-year-old me would have imposter syndrome and have doubt. So I think tapping into that voice and also I think the president aspect of it all, it's like when we had that as a framing device, it helped it where that we could have things we said, but it wouldn't be too didactic because I didn't want them to be like parables. I didn't want it to be like, and that's why you should, but I wanted to say something. And I think another thing, we hit on it a little bit before, but just kids being really smart and not talking down to them and not, like the phrase YA, like what I never thought of myself as like a YA writer, kids and family, 4-quadrant, like all of those buzzwords I learned while making a show and doing press for it, honestly, because I just was like, we're writing a show that like I would have watched when I was a kid, but also I want to watch now. Like, what are we doing if we're sitting in, especially in a comedy room, and we're not making ourselves laugh and we're not. So people had asked me when the show came out, like, did you have like a middle school consultant, like telling you like, and I was like, no. And honestly, it was a thing I was a little worried about. We were just doing the things we found funny and we found emotional and we found meaningful. And guess what? Kids are not some like other species. Like they you can trust them. You don't need to hold their hand. And the stuff that we found funny and interesting and meaningful, like they did too. I remember the first table read where we had a lot of our kid guest cast, and kids don't hide what they're feeling. Like they were adults do sometimes. If you're in a big fancy table read, you'll laugh to be polite. Kids don't laugh to be polite. And when some of our kids guest, like when the guest cast, we had like a big room of kids for our episode 103 table read. And it was sort of our like big funny, or like the other episodes were funny, but this one was like really funny, I think. And I remember they were laughing and I was like, they don't have to do that.
Right.
And I was like,
working.
humor is like pretty universal, so trusting that and trusting that kids will get it.
Well, and I think the other thing that all three of you do really well, being a parent as well, you have good adult storylines and you have good kids storylines, and how they cross-pollinate and build on each other and support each other. I think that's really important for a kids and family space too.
Yeah, where you identify, I wanted parents to identify with the adult characters, but also the kid characters, and same with the kids. I didn't want it to be like, oh, the kid's going to go to the bathroom when the mom's story's on, and the mom's going to go make dinner when the kid's story's on. I wanted everybody to find, because, it's feelings like, jealousy and emotional wants and best friendship and things that are you don't lose them with age.
Right. But even like the relationship that her mom has, and how that's, different as well. I just thought that was really well done.
Thank you.
Morgan?
Yeah, Tracey, well, we have to shout out season 3 of Sulphur Springs just dropped. So everyone better go check that out. And I don't know if it's just me, but season 3 is way scarier than previous seasons. And so I'm wondering, particularly because, we meet your protagonists in season 1 when they're 12. So, now, they've aged a little bit, but they're still, young protagonists. How do you balance those genre elements with a more, while still writing for a young audience and having these young leads?
Yeah, I think the third season, we definitely are stepping further out of the box. The thing is, there's so much time between when you shoot and when it goes on the air. We had a year in between, And when you're dealing with kids, they shoot up, like our leads are now 17 years old, 16 years old. And so we assume that our audience is growing with them as well. Our core audience, we obviously welcome new viewers and want to retain as many as possible. But I think putting some of the dialogue in their mouths would sound inauthentic that we were writing season 1 now that they're older. So I think the challenge was staying true to the show and who these characters are, but still leaning into the fact that they're getting older. And that I think with us, we don't like with Disney, they're very used to at least sitcoms and, what's the issue of the episode. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, guys, we have to stop thinking like that because continuing drama is not like that. This episode is going to have this is going to be revealed, but you can't just do a log line of this episode is, the one where she learned that her friend something. So we tackled issues, but we did it in a way that like our season 2 mystery was about eminent domain. Mm-hmm. And when we pitched that, they were like, kids aren't going to get eminent domain. And I'm like, but if you do it in a mysterious way and it's about character, forget plot. Like I write from character first. When you're saying mystery is hard, it's like write for the character and then you weave in the clues later. I think our writing staff loves to be like, okay, this would be cool. And it's like, okay, but what does this do to the character? Where are they going? So character first always. And I think with that story, people cared about it because we weren't going on and on about eminent domain. It was very simple. These were characters that they liked, and they learned that this land had been stolen from a character's family. Mm-hmm. So they cared about getting it back. And I think season 3, the mystery, it got spookier because there was a drive for it to get spookier. Originally, this was a show for younger kids, like 9 to 11. And when I pitched it, I said, this is going to be a show that everyone can watch. And if there's a jump scare, we resolve it right away so you're not too scared. And the stakes kept getting upped each season because people said they wanted to see more. You can't, eventually you see a ghost this season, spoiler alert, guys. And, it's always been something like in the background and, what was behind them. But when you don't see it, it's almost scarier, in my opinion. So the fact that there is spookiness this season that we haven't done in the past, and it's a little because the effects we're using and stuff, it's more graphic, but at the same time, I still lean on the fact like season 1 was spooky because you didn't know what was in the house. Right. Hotel, excuse me. But it's, it's what every kid wonders about, like what's in my closet, what's under my bed. Yeah. And having kids that are young now, and explaining to them nothing's in your closet. But, I think it's finding way to tell story, especially in the middle school years. Yeah. You're experiencing firsts, a lot of firsts. You're not a kid, but you're not an adult yet. It's probably your first time falling in love and your first kiss. And I love exploring all that stuff, but we take our time with it. It's, we have a saying in our writer's room, it's make them wait. Yeah. That's why you want them to watch and watch and watch. And just when you think it's going to happen, blow another secret so that they have to wait until the next season for that relationship story. Right. And, I think the other thing is you were talking about adults not writing them, not just backburnering them. And for us, like I write adults. That's what my background was. So when we were casting adults, we were like, you're going to have story. Don't worry. You're not going to be just a parent that comes in and says, where were you today? And I think each season we've given one of the adults on the show, a story that reveals who they are. And I think that's also why the time travel aspect really helps it a lot, because the first season they got to meet their parents as younger kids. And so for us, you've seen it done before, but for us, it's a way to understand your parent. Mm-hmm. And I think like coming together, families are watching this show. For us, that was important. So I think to answer your question, Morgan, we've adapted the way that, not that we write the characters, but we are skewing a little bit more teen now. Our younger kids who were like 9 are now, 13. So we have to lean in. We've let them in on the mystery this season. They're time traveling. So they're growing with the show, and hopefully the audience responds to it.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Writing down character first, make him wait, taking notes. This is great.
all right. Well, we've established that you guys have all written for multiple genres, and when we were preparing, we were thinking, but how do you keep that hat on the whole time you're in the room for that specific target demographic? So, Ilana, do you want to share how, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, now I'm in tween world. How do I stay in tween world, and how do you keep the room accountable too? Because there's a lot of shows that have things that push a genre maybe a little older or even a little younger. So like staying in that sweet spot, I think, is really when a family show hits the mark. And would love to know your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, well, it's funny because Crazy Ex it's the show I grew up in. I was an assistant. I worked my way up to writer. And I think that that's like where I also like learned to write complicated women.
Mm-hmm.
And even though, the character I was writing was in middle school, I took a lot from this very, very different character in a very, very different situation. Rachel Bloom's character, Rebecca Bunch, just of Crazy Ex gave permission to have messy, flawed characters. There was one like PR thing where the poster for like season 3, I think, was Rebecca in like a Breaking Bad hazmat suit as like an anti-hero, because like we never get to see women as anti-heroes until, thank you, Taylor Swift and Rachel Bloom. But I think I took a lot of that of presenting, and Elena's not a anti-hero, but she's messy and she's flawed, and that is weirdly so hard for some people to stomach. But I think, yeah, I mean, in terms of staying like on track, it's sometimes, you would pitch something that maybe, so Crazy Ex was a show that was, sorry.
I love it. Keep going.
Crazy Ex was a show that was like references by the minute. Like it was so now. I pitched a joke about Meghan Markle. I called her because I went to Northwestern and I was a theater major, and I knew Rebecca would know that. So she called Meghan Markle Prince Harry's Northwestern theater major girlfriend. From the time that I pitched that joke to the time that it aired, they had ADR'd it and changed it to fiance. Like that show was to the minute, because that was part of the humor of the show. It was now, it was funny. We were making fun of things as they were happening. Now, Diary, when I started that, we had to figure out, like, I actually first wrote it as taking place when I was a 12-year-old. So like early 2000s. And Disney said, can you make it 2020? Which, haha, but can you make it 2020? And I really didn't want to make it 2020 because I feel like, first of all, I didn't want to say we have to wait that long for a female president. And second of all, I didn't really want to think about time is really what it was. Because I didn't want it to be like, oh, these kids are like in their phones and now we have to do a TikTok episode. Like I wanted it to feel, so we created this time period we would call the now-ish. And then when we would flash forward to future, Elena, it would be the future-ish. Mm-hmm. So now-ish, so there would be some times where writers would pitch jokes or things that were maybe not in the now-ish, where it was like, like Billie Eilish is a Crazy Ex-Girlfriend reference. Beyonce, because she's timeless, is more of like a now-ish thing. And I think that putting it in a particular time helped us, because Crazy Ex, we would go on and on, like with a run of making fun of something that was like literally happening right now. Diary, it was like, do we need that reference? Why do we need that reference? I mean, we kind of started abandoning it season 2. There is a Dave Franco reference in season 2, but I couldn't cut it. It was too funny. Like another writer wrote it and I was like, that's funny. But just like recognizing sort of where we were and being like, is that serving So if somebody were to say something, whether it was a way that a character would reference a pop culture event, or, you know, it was like, are we staying in this? It's kind of what Tracey was saying too, is it's character first. Like, I think Crazy Ex obviously had incredible character development, but the jokes were also like, the referential jokes were such a huge part of the comedy. And we were like, we're not going to do like a run on, I'm really losing of like, you know, of an influencer. We're not going to like say the word influencer. And so how do we get across that joke and that thing that somebody said in the room that made us all laugh without making it like, without putting a timestamp on
Dating it. Yeah, I totally agree. Very cool. Morgan, do you want to?
Yeah, well, Tracey, I wonder if you want to pick up from there, kind of with this soaps world. You've talked a little bit about, you know, kind of the ongoing conflict or the ongoing mystery to Secrets of Sulphur Springs. You know, are there you know, storytelling elements you do have to shift for that audience in terms of, you know, levels of conflict, or you know, what types of character arcs you're getting into? Are there mental leaps you have to make when, you know, going from soap to a Disney Channel show or Disney show?
You would think that they would be bigger, honestly. But you know, soaps are on during a day part where kids do watch. So we had certain rules on soaps too. I mean, there obviously was a lot of relationship stuff in soaps that you don't do in kids TV. But we wrote for we write for kids like they're people. As all the other panelists have been saying, it's, you know, so many shows do talk down to kids. So coming from soaps, it was more just how to tell the story in so few episodes. Because in soaps, you have 250 episodes a year. And, you know, as a writer coming up in soaps, it's the hardest job, because you're turning out a script every single week, but it's also the greatest training ground, because, you know, I know if you've ever been on staff somewhere, you're so worried that you're not going to get a script, or, you know, I got a script every week, and if it wasn't the best script, I had another chance the next week. And for a young writer, that's a blessing that you don't get, especially in today's world where, you know, show orders are so small now. You know, 6 episodes, 8 episodes. It's hard, because you have also writers that you want to mentor and bring up, but you only have so many scripts to give. It's really hard, but I think soaps taught me so much. It really taught me how to plot very fast. So I think we used to plot and then pitch 3-month story arcs when we worked in soaps. So the showrunner on Secrets is actually someone I've worked with on many other shows. He was my mentor when I was an intern, gave me my first, you know, script in soaps. His name's Chuck Pratt. And we have such a shorthand, because we both have worked in soaps for so long, that when we're pitching, we'll just go, okay, yeah, that's, you know, 3 episodes from now. I get where you're going with that. That when we look at a season, we are marking sort of what we're going to do plot wise, but as we're writing scripts or breaking a show, if something comes up, it's like, okay, let's go this way. This is awesome. We're still going to get to where we're going. But the freedom to move around, I think in soaps, you don't have quite as much freedom, because you're turning out so much material. You know, and a lot of that, there's so many characters to service in soaps. I know when we first went in Sulphur and told them the cast that we needed, they're like, no, we only have like 4 main characters. And like, guys, it's a family. This person has a family as well. And you need all these people to service the story. And I promise you, no one's going to be left without a story and just, you know, be the friend who comes in. Everybody plays a big part in this show. And I think it was getting them into the mindset that you can have big ensembles, but not cheat the viewer, I guess, if you will, or cheat the actor who's playing that character. It's not that big of a departure, because you're still telling the same story if you're looking at it from character. What's this character's motivation? What do they need? How are they feeling? And if you look at it that way, it's not so different, which is what I've learned in writing for kids, which is, you know, this was my first time writing for kids, and it's a fun space because also just interacting with the kids on set, especially like our kids, because they don't get the scripts too far ahead. They get it right before the table read, and they read the scripts, and then they come and they're like, oh my gosh, okay, this is what's going to happen. So they have their own theories too, and that makes it so much fun because it's not so dry for them either, because they're all in scenes together, you know, and they're just like, wow, what's going to happen? What do you think's going to happen? And I think, it's just a lot of fun, because also I think a lot of times people get jaded in this industry. And I think when you're with kids who haven't had all the life experience, it's refreshing, honestly. And I think there is also a difference on set. It feels more like a family because all these people are working to make sure it's a fun environment for these kids. And so it's not as different as you might think.
I love that. All right, Kelly, same question, a little twist on it. When Morgan introduced you, you've done a lot of theater work too. So I just, you know, I've met some other writers that have done theater as well. And I just think there's a certain way that you approach your writing. And I was wondering if you could share that, and or if it does, I shouldn't make that assumption, but then just how that affects your writing style, in particular for a children's show, but also just in general with that extra experience or that type of experience.
Well, as not the only theater lover on the panel, as Ilana had stated as well, and Tracey, I don't know if you love theater as well, but I'm going to make an assumption there's three of us, just because theater is great. But I, like many millennials, because I am a millennial, I grew up on Disney storytelling. I grew up on the magic of family storytelling and not even realizing it's family. And oftentimes that's still my comfort food. That's the thing I have on repeat when I'm making Thanksgiving dinner. Like, for me personally, it's what feels like home. It's what feels like where I once was and where I want to go. Being in touch with that inner child is an essential thing. And if for anybody who's hopefully doing therapy as well, maybe there's something to sort of navigate about why adults are so afraid of younger content resonating with them. I think there's something beautiful about timeless storytelling. There's something beautiful about a story not hinging on the laurels, much like Ilana was saying, necessarily of references. So there's that place for comedy. That's a specific niche audience. I think that family storytelling in particular really requires a sense of openness and it just cannot be defined. When I think of SpongeBob and how that's still the funniest thing on planet Earth, and you can watch the first few seasons and you will laugh, and all the comedy is timeless. And the only thing that you're going to reference is itself, because it's so good at making jokes and it's so phenomenal with its story and its character work. And so for me personally, trying to achieve that, specifically when I'm trying to tell stories like that, that's the golden ticket, to quote another great musical. And so I really feel that I at least try to approach my storytelling as to what is the beating heart of the story and who is it for? And then from there, navigate. Because I really don't think, much like how my career began, as Tracey was saying, hers was in soaps, mine was in animation. And you know, I started with My Little Pony and then Final Space and Mau Mau, and I wrote on all of these different shows, freelance and staff. And getting that experience was how I understood where you can approach it, even when it's for adults. Storytelling should be timeless, especially in the animation space as well. And it really taught me about the essential things like, okay, at Act 1, this is what happens. I once had a story editor like sit me down and like beat it down out of me. She tore apart, Nina, I love you, but she tore apart one of my outlines to a point that I wanted to cry. And I knew she was coming from a good place. And I had to sit back and I listened to her talk to me for an hour, and I didn't become a great storyteller until she sat me down and taught me that. And that's going to carry with me for the rest of my life. She literally helped me break through something. And she wrote on Lizzie McGuire, and she's written on Mau Mau, and she's written on all these shows. And it's the same type of storytelling, much how animation's just a medium for the story and live action is a medium. It's the same with the genres we're talking about. They're mediums of audience spaces. They're not genres, they're mediums. At least that's how I view ages. And all of that being said, especially with my musical, Starry particularly, I've written some other shows, but Starry I'll talk about. And also, I hope you guys like As the Sun is Setting, how I'm getting a little line on my face. This is all meant to be. It's always good lighting until the sun goes down. But look at it's like literally splitting my face in half. And anyway, but Starry for me, one of the things that I love about it most was as we were conceptualizing the story, my writing partner, Matt Dahan, and I, he does lyrics and he does music and I do book and lyrics as well. When we were coming up with the story, we just really wanted to write the best story we could about Vincent van Gogh. And, right. You know, I have such a love for him and his artistry. And I feel that he can help heal so many people in terms of how his family helped him through his illness. And that is a story that kids any age and adults of any age should hear and understand. And so when we were approaching that story, at the end of the day, we released the concept album and then, you know, the audience started to spread out. And one of the most fascinating things when we were talking to producers and people about the audience for the story that we had built, it was always the most passionate people, the ones who connected it with the most, kids from 12 to 18. Like teens were obsessed with, and still are to this day, I get messages every day, but they are so in love with somebody being honest with their emotions and not shying away from their pain and leaning into it and admitting that they're flawed, admitting that they're hurting, that life is hard, that things are difficult, not being afraid of those icky emotions that we're not supposed to have as kids, things that we're supposed to avoid or evade, but kids are feeling their sadness as grand as they're feeling their happiness. Right. They're feeling emotions very rawly. And I think that they are the emotional core of storytelling. Like if you can tap into that frequency, if you can tap into a true emotion, you're doing your storytelling right. And that should really resonate with adult audiences too. So that's my 2 thoughts on that.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree. I totally agree. All right, we are running long. So Morgan, I think we need to pick our favorite question. And I have one, and then maybe you can pick one too. And then we'll throw it and get questions from the audience. As a mom, I think that kids today are dealing with a lot. And I just wonder, as storytellers, how you choose those different storylines that you do want to highlight in your shows. And obviously, we've seen your shows, and we obviously from everything you've shared today, the care that you put into those choices. But just wondering how you go about that process, because we've seen shows that have had a negative impact. And, you know, I just think it's on all of us that are developing content to really have that thoughtfulness on those storylines. So just wondered if you could share, you know, top line, how you guys make those decisions. Ilana, do you want to?
Yeah, I think it all, you know, no surprise, comes back to character. There's so much that I wanted to explore, so much I wish I could have explored. And, you know, I could have 5,000 episodes with all of the things that I think like teens should be watching and learning.
Agreed.
But I remember there's stuff, it's like what you were saying, Tracey, about the mystery in terms of like what topics you want to cover. I really wanted to cover the idea of being like a Latina who doesn't speak Spanish, who didn't grow up speaking it. And kind of like the mystery, we spent like a couple days really trying to like figure that out. It was going to be the 3rd episode, and we were like, what is it? And we had a whole thing, and there was like a book and a grandma, like there were so many things happening, and it just didn't work with the character. And I think it's knowing when you have to kind of be like, okay, this is not the story that's like begging to be told. This is not, we can explore that through a line here or there. There was one line in 201 where Elena's like, she's going to think of me as the Spanish word for failure. That's it. We know she doesn't speak Spanish. You don't have to do a whole episode. And what we needed to explore in episode 3, that what came to us was the relationship between her and her mom. And that's what we needed. That's what the story needed when we looked at the whole season, when we looked at this character. And And, but with our older brother storyline, he had a coming out story. It was really important to, have a coming out story and have this queer character. But also the way his coming out story was not like, now I'm going to come out. It was about this kid who keeps everything inside, learning to open up. That's what that needed to be. Right. And that, that it happened to be about his sexuality, but that character from the pilot was a kid who needed to like share and open and learn. And so I think it's just like, you can get so excited, and you see it on TV, like in the past and now, of things where like they suffer from wouldn't it be cool if syndrome is like what I call it, of like, wouldn't it be cool if we explored this? Wouldn't it be, meaningful if we delved into that? Like, yes, but you can't do it unless the characters are like, unless it means something for the characters and the story and the emotion.
I love that. All right, Morgan, does anyone want to add to that? Or Morgan, your last question, and then we'll kick it to the audience for some questions.
Ooh, okay, I'll jump in with my last question, which is, a lot of you have mentioned that, when you're writing, often you think about your younger self, or you're inspired by, the little kid or the, preteen that you were. I'm curious, we have a lot of aspiring writers listening. If you have any words of advice or wisdom, either for your younger self or for the aspiring writers in the audience. Kelly, I see you nodding. Do you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lofty question. I think for me personally, my best word of advice is, when it really comes down to it, do your best to tell the story that you want to tell. And what I mean by that too is, in a certain way, really evaluate that, like really step into it. Is this a story that you have to tell, that you need to tell? Because that's your story and you're meant to tell that story. And in my heart too, especially in this medium in particular, there's an honoring. So when you receive that story, honor it, but also honor others in the process of it too, because this is a collaborative world and a collaborative business. And so always walk with an open heart and walk with respect and honor, because like your stories will find their way. And I'm living proof of that, because I'm from nowhere, but I'm doing it.
I love that.
I love that. That's beautiful.
It is. It's beautiful.
Tracey, you want to jump in?
I was going to say, write for yourself. Kind of to piggyback off what Kelly said, I think don't worry about what your agent, your manager, anybody is saying is selling at the moment, because if it's not something that you believe in and that you're passionate about, it's not going to matter, because it's going to show in your writing. All of us have probably been in that situation where it's like, oh, vampires are big this season. Can you write a vampire thing? Well, I could, but I don't want to. It's write what you love, and write for, as you said, the story that you want to tell and put out in the world. I think it's stay true to that. Just don't, of course you're going to have notes from everybody and their brother, but stay true to what you want your show to be, but also make sure that, when you first do your own show, I think it's you let go of your baby a little bit. You have to be open to what everybody else brings to the show. I know what ended up on air in The Look. It's like, it's wild to me what people saw from reading my script of how they created the world. And I think you have to be really open to those ideas and know that people are just as passionate about it as you are, and welcome the input, because I think it is really hard when you've been writing and the story is so close to you. But yeah, I'd say those are my words of advice.
Ilana, any parting?
Oh, all of that. You have to, when I was talking about Diary, I think if I had known what Disney Plus was, if somebody had said they need a YA show that I don't necessarily know if it would have happened the way it happened. I think that, yes, like I got lucky because this is what Disney Plus was looking for, but also like that was the story I wanted to tell. That was, nobody was telling me, make it this way, make it that way. In fact, when they said that, I said, no. I think that it's just really important. I always thought that there was like a version of myself that Hollywood wanted me to be. But what Hollywood like literally needs is you, just you, and don't try to fit into anything. Just be you.
Love that. Yes. We should, whatever you do, snap. I'm not cool enough to get that right.
Yeah.
All right, Caroline, do you want to jump in and ask some questions?
Hi all. Oh my gosh, what a great panel. So thank you. We've got lots of questions. So I'm just going to kind of start off who it was pointed to, and then feel free to jump in if you have some things to add. This one is for Kelly, and there's lots of questions like this. So it's really, how do you recommend starting a career as a TV writer who doesn't live in LA? There was lots of ones that do live in LA. And then is it better to move and get a PA job, work on a portfolio, apply to fellowships, curia manager, an agent? What are your thoughts?
I have strong thoughts on this one. So I will preface by saying it's good to get a lot of different opinions on this. You don't need an agent or a manager. They need you. They should be finding you. And if they are hunting for you, then you know they're going to work that hard to get you the work and get them what they want out of that too. Okay. Don't forget, they're a part of your team. They should be working for you. It is a relationship. There's some symbioticness into it, but otherwise, throw that out the window. Do you have to be in LA? Maybe. It's dependent on the room. What we've been through the past few years is very difficult. One thing it did do, especially for a lot of kids, are up and coming talent. I say kids, people who are like in college and a little younger who want to pursue this. You might be at home on your res. You might be, in a very difficult financial situation. It's possible now. It is possible, to quote a fantastic musical starring Whitney Houston and Brandy. It's possible. And so you can work from your town, your small home, building those connections. Could it be 3 times harder? Possibly. But thanks to the internet, thanks to some rooms being digital, thanks to a lot of meetings. I mean, look at this. This is a digital discussion as well. It can happen. I have heard people getting that door open. But when you do land that job, and if they need you out in LA, I would recommend, hopping on the flight and getting ready to do a little stint wherever they need you. The best word of advice I can give for people who are up and coming, your craft. It's really about your connections a bit. Yes, of course, your craft. And not just the craft of your storytelling and your scripts, the craft of working in a room, the craft of knowing how to pitch, the craft of knowing how to communicate with others. Work on all those different corners of craft. So that way, when you walk into something, even if you're good in one craft, the others won't feel so imbalanced, and you'll feel safe and secure and ready to really pursue a career in this, because learning along the way can be very difficult and financially difficult. So really get yourself into a good position. And I'm here, I'm cheering you on. Tag me on Twitter stuff. I'll retweet.
Because you have an amazing Twitter following, apparently. All right, Caroline. Does anyone want to add to that, or should we go to the next question? No.
Awesome. Okay, so the next one was, what does writing look like in a post-COVID world, especially in the writer's room? How are kids different than they were before and after? Are you writing sort of towards that? And this one was for Tracey.
Good question. Our writer's room went virtual with COVID, and we have never gone back into the room. So we've been virtual this whole time. As Kelly said, it has its advantages in that you can be anywhere. But at the same time, it's a little difficult when you're not in a room and making jokes. And a writer's room is a fun place to be. And you're putting up cards, you're throwing away the ones that are terrible after you've been sitting working on something for 2 hours. It's different. Now we do virtual cards. You manage your time differently. Some people say we get a lot more done because we just want to get off the computer and start writing. I think it's less social. You still have your jokes and stuff, but it's a different feel than it was before. Also, I think our show took place, I can't say timeless because we are a time travel show, but it started in 2020 and we are technically still in 2020. So we're not addressing COVID. We're not changing anything because it seems like we live that in real life. I don't think that we need to give any more experience of that to kids in a show. I don't want to watch a show like that just because we all lived it and it was terrible, and now I don't know. People may have different opinions on that, but kids, went virtual, they weren't in school. And I think television should be an escape. I come from a news background. So I worked at CNN during all the big stories you can imagine, right when the war started in Iraq. And it was, I got sick of giving people bad news. So TV for kids should be enjoyable. I remember coming home from school and couldn't wait to turn on the TV while I was eating my snack and then starting my homework, So writing has changed as far as the venue that we do it in, but I don't think our approach to the show has been any different. I mean, shooting, definitely. Production's a different question, but yeah.
Very cool. One last one, Caroline, or?
Yes, let's do one last one. This one is for Ilana, and it says, how do you make a stand for an idea for a show that's shot down by a network? So, for example, I've seen a lot of showrunners having to fight networks to include LGBTQ representation, and I've always been curious what that kind of looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. We were really lucky to have network execs who were supportive. When it got kind of like, when things got up and up and up, sometimes it was a little bit more of a fight. But I mean, in the pitch, I said that the brother was a queer and gonna come out, and like that's what they bought. I think that taking a stand, though, is an art, and knowing sort of when to cash in your chips and what is important to take a stand about. I was really lucky. Gina Rodriguez was very willing to throw her weight around when needed. So if there were certain things that if I or my co-showrunner couldn't get across, she would throw her weight around. She's like, I'm going to call she knows that her name has weight and she would use it. And I think that's important, but you can't do that all the time.
Okay.
So I think it is an art and it is important. And I'm like such a nerd that I like not notes that, tamper lived experience, but just general notes of like ways to make something better. I like notes. I like an assignment. I like being able to deliver. I like working and collaborating with other people to see if we can do it. So I know that there are some showrunners and creators who, you get that instant, like, oh my God, no, I hate that. That's not what I thought. And it's so easy to just push back immediately. I'm always like, great, let's see if we can do it. Like, great, we'll do it. And I try to do it, or I try to do the note behind the note. And I think having that, and I'm working on Working Girl actually with two of my execs from Diary. They moved over to 20th and we're doing the movie together. And they said, they were like, you're so good at taking notes. And it's like, if you establish that, then when you need to fight for something, when you need to bring in the big guns, you will be taken seriously, because it's not like every little thing I'm like, well, that's not how I imagined it, because chances are it's not. Like Tracey was saying, it's a living and breathing thing and so many different people touch it and you have to trust the process. But when it threatens the character and someone's journey, and it becomes like tamping down on a lived experience or something, or censorship, that's when you put your stake in the grass and your word is taken more seriously, because you are a good sport about all of the billion other things you have to be a good sport about.
Yeah, definitely. As a mom, I say to my daughters, choose your battles. All right. On that note, I cannot thank all of you guys enough. You're insanely talented, and thank you for taking the time to share your experience, your wisdom, and truly your joy for what you do with our audience tonight. It was a very special panel, and feel honored to be a part of it. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and hopefully we'll do more things like this going forward. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.